My name is Riccardo Sai. I'm the founder of visual storytelling studio Storo. I'm here today with Bryce Groves, who's a good friend of mine and our collaborator who we have done quite a lot of work together over the past few years. He's in New Zealand, I'm in London, and I'm quite excited to have him here. So Bryce, we're here to talk about a very interesting subject, but I'll let you introduce yourself first. So who are you, Bryce?
Kia ora, everybody. From Aotearoa, New Zealand. By the way, this is not my normal background. I'm in a little holiday cottage. I don't normally live in a place with a ladder. I guess I call myself a multidisciplinary creative director. I've made a career of bouncing between different disciplines and different places, working in New Zealand and in the UK, with Riccardo, with big agencies and independently. So I've had this quite varied existence, which I've then put together to make what I think is a really interesting offering with like a really rich toolbox of things I can contribute. And every decade I do some self-education. I study documentary, which is how I got to know Riccardo originally. And then recently I have just completed a postgraduate certificate in leading change for good, which is a very lofty title, many factors, but that's part of my transformation into the next phase of being not just a creative director, but what I call myself as a creative change director. And right now I'm in the phase where I'm working for somebody. I'm a quarter of the way into a 2-year contract with Greenpeace Aotearoa.
That's very exciting. I look forward to see what you guys are doing on that part of the world. So, yeah, as Bryce said, we've been collaborating for, I don't know, maybe a decade or maybe even more. I don't know. I forgot when we met. And we have done all sorts of projects together. And I think one thing that we have in common with Bryce is always that we like to push boundaries. We like to challenge our clients to do some things differently. And so there's a whole list of clients and projects that we could talk about that. But that kind of inspired me to invite Bryce to talk about creativity. And we're both very passionate about sustainability, about climate change, and about purpose-driven businesses. So really kind of helping those businesses to tell stories in a more creative and impactful way. So because it's such a huge theme, we decided to actually separate this conversation in different parts, because otherwise we will have like a 2 hours feature-length conversation about creativity and impactful communication. So the overall theme is creativity for impactful and meaningful results. And but today in particular we're going to talk more about how can creativity and stories help change the world. So as Bryce said before, we're both very passionate about storytelling, and we tell stories in many different ways, from photography all the way to advertising campaigns and videos and feature films, anything. We've done we cover pretty much all of that. So I wanted to ask Bryce a bit more about storytelling and creativity, and can we really change the world with creativity and stories, and how can we do that? So Bryce, what do you think of that?
That's a huge question. As you said, I think in the world we're so swamped with information and news, and social media as well, so stories are a way to anchor us and to give us a human connection to what's going on. And also storytelling is, as has been said, within branding and so forth for like the last 10 years, it is a fundamental way that humans connect and understand things. So it definitely has a place in changing the world. Interesting thing I've been reflecting on is that creativity, we often think, people like Riccardo and myself, is like, we're going to change the world, we're going to solve this issue, we're going to make life better using creativity and storytelling. But it doesn't just belong to those of us who want to do good. It's not exclusive to those who are wanting to make the world better. That is also in use by, shall we say, people who have a different agenda for the world. For instance, there's a PR agency who has been behind Brexit and Boris Johnson's campaigns and things like that, who've openly said we use fear and hatred to get people on board, and they use tricks like deliberately misspelling tweets and using Comic Sans and terrible fonts so that they look like the common man. And that's, they're very smart guys that do this. So I think it's always worth reflecting as a creative that there are other creatives out there that might be working against us. We don't have a monopoly on one side of the story.
Absolutely. You can change the world, but in many different ways.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, have you seen, Ricardo, that sort of thing in your work? Have you noticed creativity being used for evil, shall we say?
Yeah, well, I try to stay away from that, but I did notice that, and funny enough, when I think about that, it's kind of I think first about politicians and how they use storytelling and visual storytelling in that sense. So, but there are. But I don't work with politicians. I tend to work more with the good people. I'm not saying that all the politicians are bad people, but I try to work with brands because I think we can change the world at different levels. As individuals, we can change the world with our the choices that we make on our daily life. We can change the world as politicians, as policymakers. And that's, of course, all the work that has been happening at the different COP around over the years. What I do is a part of the change that I do as an individual in my life, in my lifestyle, is I work with brands because I do think brands and companies have an incredible power in terms of changing, because we do buy things from brands. We work with companies all the time, so they have an incredible impact on our lives. And as us as individuals, we also have an incredible power because we make we buy things from brands, and so that's my niche. I work with brands, so and that's what I do. So, and I try to work with the brands that align with me, with my values and with my purpose. So yeah. But so going back to
I had an experience before I started Greenpeace. I was freelancing, and I was thinking about, for me, even a brand, in this case it was Samsung, was advertising their next model of phone, and I thought I could still try and do something with this, even though it's a consumer brand, and does the world need yet another model of phone that's only slightly better? And so they wanted a launch event, and one of the ideas I pitched was, because their camera was amazing, new camera for low light, but they actually briefed us to do something that would appeal to young people in a different way, rather than just DJ cool party sort of vibe. And so we proposed a midnight tree planting that would be filmed by this teams using this phone with this amazing camera. And I thought, and they didn't go with it in the end, unfortunately, but I thought, would it change the world? Not necessarily, but it would position Samsung as being somebody who gave a damn. And maybe one person, maybe two people might come to that event or see the event, watch the event online and go, and think a little bit differently about how they choose what brands, or how they run their life, or how they see the world. And you think about Greta Thunberg, she's like one person. And so maybe sometimes it's enough to inspire one person, and you can do that with a brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, they're very powerful. And I think what is interesting is that there's small brands that tend to be more. They make those changes a bit quicker, I think, because of course, they're just smaller, so they can change, they can align their purpose. And I think COVID, really trigger a lot of changes in that sense, in terms of, really people, and small business owners really kind of, thinking about, so what is my purpose? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? The famous why. Bigger brands are a bit slower, but actually, it's the bigger brands that, if they do change, I think they can have a bigger impact as well. So and I think a lot of brands they don't get it right straight away, but especially when it comes to sustainability, I think there is a lot of goodwill out there. Of course, it's dangerous because there's a lot of the danger of greenwashing is always there. But I think a lot of the big brands are also moving in that direction, which is quite exciting, I think, especially for 2023, which I'm quite excited about that. So, what else? So how we change the world with stories? Have you got anything else that you want to add? So, can creativity do something? How can we contribute as creatives to that change?
I think stories and creativity a way to make issues accessible to people. And I don't want to keep quoting my own work, but something I worked on last year I was quite proud of was for New Zealand Dental Association, which is, automatically that sounds boring. And so they were doing a campaign, which they do every year, to try and get young people to stop drinking sugary drinks, because we have a real problem in New Zealand with teeth, young people's teeth. And they wrote an example script, and they talked about, and it was the most boring science, sounded like a dentist talking to you and all this language. And so what I tried to bring to it was, who's going to be watching this as a 21-year-old who likes drinking Red Bull all the time, and how can we talk to them in a way that feels not like a big voice saying do this, do that, or not lecturing, not like a teacher, but something that makes them feel inspired. And so that's where creativity and storytelling can come in. And in this case, we used the brand spokeswoman and took her hiking and climbing on rocks, and wrote a script it was as colloquial as I could get it. It had to have a little bit of that dentist sort of language in it, but trying to make stuff that's in people's world, which clients often don't understand. They think of their lingo and their statistics and their products' benefits, but actually sometimes people don't want to know that. You can talk to people in a really human way, and that's